Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing Assassin's Creed, and this one took me a while. So let's go into this. Assassin's Creed, if you don't already know, is going to be the kind of game in the same vein of V-Commandos, now renamed V-Sabotage. It's going to be from Triton Noir, that's going to be bringing you a stealth-based game. They originally came out with V-Commandos, again, now named V-Sabotage, as a game system. They expanded upon that system. They recently had a large Kickstarter for that system. And then somewhere in between that, they had a Kickstarter for Assassin's Creed, which, as a theme, seemed to fit perfectly onto the V-Commando system. A stealth-based game where you accomplish objectives, you want to try to remain silent as long as possible. Eventually, the alarm might sound, but then hopefully you do that later enough or with enough strength and support that you can escape unharmed, accomplishing your goals. That's the basic idea of, well, both these systems. Where Assassin's Creed differs from, I gotta stop calling it V-Commandos and Sabotage, where Assassin's Creed differs from that other game is going to be that it's more of a legacy-ish, campaign-ish style game. You have some stickers, you don't really tear up any components, you can reset the entire game. The only thing you have to reprint out is a campaign sheet and then potentially buy more stickers if you care about that element, although you can literally just mark them off with a pencil, you'd be good there. But past that, it's going to introduce a lot of other gameplay differences while maintaining most of the same gameplay elements. It's going to be basically the same game and then some. And as a fan of V-Commandos, as a huge fan of that system, I backed this thing all in when it was on Kickstarter because I love that system and I love Assassin's Creed and I want to see what the two combined did. In this review, I'm going to go over a bit of the how to play aspects. It's going to be very surface level because covering this in depth would take a long time. But we're going to go into the surface level idea of the game. We'll cover what I liked, didn't like, can see others not liking, timestamps down below to any relevant section. And the basic idea I already told you. The basic idea is this is a game where you're going to be coming in, trying to accomplish an objective, and then escaping. That's what's going to go on there. You're going to have this tower over here. That's going to be your entry point, the fast travel station. You're going to enter the board and go towards your objectives, which will vary by scenario. The campaign comes with something like 20 plus games, plus more for individual character paths. That's not including any of the expansion content. And you're going to go ahead and try to accomplish your objectives, which are often going to be symbolized by this little token here. Again, everyone's going to have different, and sometimes it'll be sequential. Maybe you have to get this objective and then that objective, or different things along the way. You're going to go ahead and accomplish that objective while trying to remain stealthy as you go through the game. And stealthy is a key part of the game. You see all these guards you have. We have two different types of enemies right now. There's a whole bunch more in the box. So I have the crossbowmen and the seekers, and they're going to introduce different little bit of puzzles of how you navigate around them. But the basic idea is when you move into a spot containing enemies. So let's say this assassin's over here. Let's say we move into a spot containing an enemy. We're going to roll a die to see if we're discovered. We are not discovered right now because that symbol, the dice is going to have three sides. Two of the faces are going to be blank. Nothing happens. Two of the faces are going to be an alarm. The alarm sounds and you're caught. Two of the faces are going to be you're caught only if the guards are on high alert, which fortunately they are not. So right now I remain stealthy. I'm going to take my second action. You have 3 actions per commando. I'm going to take my second per assassin. I'm going to take my second action and I'm going to go ahead and use a hidden blade to kill that person. Awesome, he's dead. Hidden blade immediately kills them. You can only do that if you're not visible. And then a third action, maybe I go ahead and save an action cube for next round. While you have 3 actions per turn, you can save an action cube to effectively lock you in for at one point, whenever you need it, having a 4-turn action, which is a 4-action turn, which is incredibly impactful. You're going to want to do that as soon as possible because you're going to need that 4th action when you're in a sticky situation. Boom, that was a turn. Other things you can do are going to be searching through bodies to find various equipment. The equipment is going to level up across the course of the campaign and become very cool and very useful. In fact, the campaign does a great job of slowly introducing you to the various elements. You can kind of read a few pages of the rules, get it all set up, and then it will keep introducing you to new elements referencing different sections. So there's a lot of rules and a lot of things to know about, but you get introduced to them one at a time so you can pick it up slowly as you go through it. Other actions will involve straight out all-out combat. All-out combat's going to be a thing. At different points in the game, you're going to eventually trigger the alarm. And the reason you want to avoid doing that until the last minute is because at the end of every round, you're going to go ahead and draw a card that's going to spawn enemies on the various spawn points. So we have A, B, and C over here, which means if it's silent, we're going to spawn 5 people. Which means we collectively, this is set up for a 3-player game right now, we collectively need to take out 5 enemies this turn just to maintain balance in the round. At 3 actions per assassin means 9 actions total. Out of our 9 actions, 5 actions or something, because sometimes you can get 2 at a time, we'll cover that. But either way, you have to take out 5 people just to maintain balance. And that gets much worse if the alarm sounded. If the alarm sounded, there's 9 people entering the board. Do you know how hard it is to actually take out 9 people while still making progress in the game? The answer is it's very hard. And that's the trick of Assassin's Creed, the trick of the game. And again, these are similarities to the V-Commando system, lots of similarities here. But the trick of the game is trying to balance, trying to achieve your objective, remaining hidden as long as you possibly can, because once you do, you're not going to have enough time to accomplish your objectives and get out safely while killing everyone. So effectively, once that alarm triggers, the game starts escalating, more and more people on the board, and you're trying to see if you can get out and accomplish your objectives before time runs out or before you get overwhelmed. And that will eventually happen. The game is finely tuned and balanced around that idea. That's the core idea of the game. Other elements to be mindful of before we dive into the review aspect. There's going to be tons of equipment. Your assassins are going to level up and upgrade throughout the course of the game as you gain experience across different missions. Eventually you'll hit these breaking points and achieve an extra level up, which will give you these powerful one-time use cards for one-time use per scenario that you can use to get out of trouble, and they're immensely fun. They really add to your character's development. Each assassin already comes into play with their own unique ability, and that's going to further add to the way they branch out and develop. You're going to have equipment, armor, weapons, enhanced poison blade. So you might start with a hidden blade and then upgrade that to a poison blade, which could result in that crossbow guy you just killed turning around and firing a crossbow into his teammate on the way down, which is really useful. Remember how you have to take out 9 people a turn in order to maintain balance? Taking out 2 or 3 with a single action is going to go a long way towards helping you achieve that. There's going to be events, a giant deck of event cards that are going to be drawn every single round to, again, mix up the thing. Fall of the wall, immediately select a tile with a wall in it and flip it to get rid of the wall. Changing the landscape of the board. There's going to be different events that will let you go into areas, distracting guards, throw coins on the ground, walk into an area with those guards. There's going to be an entire headquarters board we haven't really touched upon. This is going to unlock a few missions, maybe 8 or 7 or 8 gameplays into your game. You're going to, maybe even less than that, I can't remember exactly how many. You'll unlock the headquarters board, which is going to add another element that you're mindful of. That you're going to be distributing various Cortezas, or depending which way you went in the game, you're going to be distributing various allies in the game to this board in order to utilize them and then go ahead and use them to unlock new equipment, to heal your teammates when they come back from battle, to accomplish different side contracts. I mean, a lot of other things you're trying to balance as you distribute your people towards different areas in this board to ultimately get what you want in between the beginning and the end points of the mission. A whole bunch of other things we haven't talked about. There's going to be this area over here where you can dive into it and then slowly kill people from it. If you ever played Assassin's Creed, you're kind of in that little hidden area and you just kind of kill someone, pulling him in and just killing him, and no one even sees it happen. Again, a lot of aspects we're not touching upon, including the tower. The tower, which would go over here right now on top of this guy. This is where the tower would go, and it's not actually there when I play or now because it really, really makes it hard to see other elements of the board. It's very cool tower. I brought it up for the review. Very not great for gameplay. Immersive to the parts of the board you can see. That is overall what Assassin's Creed is doing. And so let's talk about the review aspect of the game, and let's see if we can touch upon some degrees of differences from this and the V-Commando system. But to begin with, this game very much feels like Assassin's Creed. Now, that's kind of almost a given for me. I expected that from day one. As soon as they announced that they're taking the V-Commando system and they were putting it on Assassin's Creed, I was already interested in the game. That's why I went all in. I can see them matching. But I would say always gonna happen. Assassin's Creed to me does a much better job than V-Commandos, and V-Commandos I already really liked. I am keeping both for now, we'll get to that at the end, but Assassin's Creed, it gives you incredibly tough choices as you go through the game, and I think the gameplay aspects of the game I enjoy a lot more. The way you level up, and even just things like mitigation, there's a lot of improvements here, so let's cover a few different ones. The improvements on player count. I like this game much more as a 1 or 2 or 3 player game. I haven't played it at 4, but overall, both the player count and the number of characters you control does a better job at. The original V-Commandos, again, V-Commandos v Sabotage, the original game has always 4 characters in play. Assassin's Creed, you can play it with 1 player, 2, 3, or 4. Whether you're playing it solo, or whether you're dual, multi-handing different characters, or whatever it is. Like when I play the solo, I've played with 2 and 3 characters. And then when I've played it 3 players, we each took 1 character and we managed the board. The game does balance around the different character counts, and it does so fairly well in my opinion. I think true solo, 1 character, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. It's much harder to get things done. That the collaboration, actually, I don't think it has true solo. It doesn't have true solo. 2 characters is going to have less degree of of overlap around the way you're going to balance the way the character's trying to mitigate different things. You'll have some objectives, some maps, we have 2 full separate maps you need to go down. And that means you have no room to help each other on those maps. You have no times where you can help your other ally, because helping other allies is a big part of the game. They have this concept of combined attacks where you're going to team up with 2 characters and just try to take down a whole bunch of guards in a single space. Doing that on your own can be very hard, and the problem is the guards also retaliate. When you're not being super stealthy and clever, they fight back, and they fight back with a punch. This is going to be a game where you're going to want to manage how you choose to engage with the guards, because if you're not careful, you will die, and you will die quickly. So the game gives you a ton of choices, and the equipment aspect in this game, I think, does a much better job than the original game, because the equipment really gives you a ton of different ways to mitigate lots of things. They're going to be cars that let you travel across the map. You know, you're going to have a parachute that's going to let you fly to a rooftop across the map. You're going to have smoke bombs, just go up in a puff of smoke and then you can disappear into the night or into whatever daylight it is. You're going to have the Cortezas. You're going to have basically cars that can summon those groups of Cortezas that can then distract the guards. You're going to have various capes. There's a whole bunch of capes in the game that can give you different forms of mitigation. Re-rolling stealth rolls that you failed, which is a big thing, because one of my big problems with the V-Commandos system always was the idea that a single one-third chance can ruin your entire mission early on, and it feels so brutally punishing. It's a great game ruined by just the fact that it's a one-third chance. That means it's going to happen 1 out of 3 times on average, right? And that can really ruin your mission. And this game will give you a lot of ways to mitigate around that. From the event deck. The event deck will give you a lot of ways to mitigate not taking stealth checks when it's not useful. You're going to have various character abilities. You're going to have characters who can immediately move to a zone and immediately kill someone because that's their special ability. You're going to have various capes that let you re-roll failed stealth checks, or perhaps not even take a stealth check if there's a single guard there. There are a lot of additional forms of mitigation. The gear in general is so much more fun. The upgraded character abilities is another thing. As you unlock characters, you're going to unlock branching paths for how their characters develop. You're going to have different abilities. I think it's 3 abilities at each level. And at each level, you get to choose 1 of 3 abilities. And you are therefore building out your character in a way that different times you go through the campaign, will be different every single time, because you'll have a different complement of abilities around them. Powerful, sometimes they're not one-time use, but most of them are one-time use abilities. And they're powerful. They give you a moment where you can really do something in the game. There's going to be all kinds of gear you can upgrade and unlock throughout the game as well. The general gear system and leveling up and abilities in this game, I think it did a much better job that lets me feel more in control of what's going on. And like we said already, the events as well. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on in this game. The general decisions around the board space, I vastly prefer. In this game, in V-Commandos, it always felt much more straightforward as far as what I was doing. In Assassin's Creed, it really feels like I have to really pace myself where and when I handle moving forward, retreating, falling back. There's going to be that directional element, which again is similar to V-Commandos, where at every round, you know that, oh look, the characters are moving west this round. They're only moving west if they don't have a reason to move towards you or to engage in you. There's a lot of different decisions, and the teamwork aspect, the way you can play together to try to keep each other safe or to hurt the guards, to stop them. The aspect of killing bodies and having their bodies searched, a lot of different things going on in the Assassin's Creed universe that are just small, iterative upgrades upon the V-Commando system, but upgrades that I appreciate. The depth of the guards, the way the guards play out, the way you don't have to draw from this random bag, it removes that fiddliness. There's a lot of different things going on here that are, well, thoroughly enjoyable. As far as things I don't like about Assassin's Creed, to begin with, I already touched upon this tower is very pretty and very, very useless. At least for myself. I've tried playing with it on the board. I take it off every single time. I want to have it. I want to have, Ezio Auditore. It's not actually Ezio. I want to have it on the top of the tower and then jumping down, and then and the tower falls out too, by the way. But yeah, I want to have that, but it doesn't actually functionally, let's put that in there, it doesn't functionally work on the board space. This should go in. See, look at this. I don't know why I'm doing this in the middle of a review. But yeah, it doesn't functionally work the way I want it to on the board. So it's a very, very cool tower that is not that useful in my opinion. Great showcase, great showpiece for your general board game space. Put it on a shelf somewhere. That's what I've been doing. It's behind me on my videos. But as far as the game itself, doesn't really help me. The unique character costumes in this game feel like a wasted opportunity. See, when you're playing in the video game and you have these character costumes, you got this new costume. Oh, great, I love the way that costume is. I'm going to put on that skin or whatever it is. It's cool because you're running around in that skin. In this game, you get these unique costumes that just go on your player board. They don't affect the miniature. They don't affect anything. I feel like they had a wasted opportunity where they had these cool costumes you unlock and they keep the abilities the same. So that just felt like a bit of a waste, a bit of a tribute to the video game that didn't really carry over to my enjoyment of the board game itself. Replaying missions you lost. This is a campaign system. It's not like V-Commandos where I'm playing across V-Commandos has campaigns too, but when I lose V-Commandos, I lose and I call it a day and I play it again another time. When I lose in Assassin's Creed, there's this whole system of how you replay games, and you could replay games twice and then you move on, you get a strike. Sometimes, if I just get a bad roll at the end of a long game where I feel like it just came down to that 1/3 aspect right when it mattered the most, it's like, this is going to be true for games like 7th Continent or any other game really where punishment can be really, really harsh over small little things as I'm going through a campaign element. Sometimes I just say, I played well, I did what I was supposed to do, I came close, and I won. Now, I haven't won every single game. I've lost games, and that's cool, but I don't mind losing when it feels like I got overwhelmed, I made bad decisions early on. Getting towards the end of a campaign and just losing at the end due to some luck of the draw just feels like a really big nope kind of moment. The red bases. The assassins have this base system where when your assassin becomes discovered, you take off the base, you clip on a base, you put him on the zone, and then when you throw your little smoke bomb, you clip off the base, you put back on the base, and then you continue your game. Guess the amount of times I've done that. I don't do that. That seems like a waste of time. I personally just put the guy on top of the little red base like so. It's not elegant, it's not pretty, but for a system where your assassins are constantly going to be visible, then incognito, visible, incognito, back and forth, I'm not clipping and reclipping bases back on. I feel there could have been a better opportunity to manage that other than what I'm doing, which is currently clipping and, well, again, you're supposed to clip and unclip bases. I'm just letting it go underneath it. It's a small, minor gameplay annoyance, not a big deal. My biggest two things with Assassin's Creed, all those things are kind of more nitpicks. My biggest two things with Assassin's Creed and where it lies for me in terms of my overall rating, which we'll get to at the end, is going to be that it is, at the end of the day, a campaign system with a ton of stuff and not a really clear way to streamline it as far as picking up where you left off in between games. There's a big box here. You may have noticed this gigantic box over here. There's a lot of content in that box, and this is a campaign game. If it's not set up on the table and you're not going through it game after game, coming back to it after a break, it's going to be hard. This is a game where I have played it in, I have to double check the numbers, I've played it like 14, 15 times in 2 sessions. Not sessions, but like I set up the game, played through it, then left the setup, continued playing through it. I packed it up one time, and then I brought it out again and went through it again. When I pack this up again, it's going to be hard to pull out again. No different than other campaign games. This is a me problem, to be very clear. It might be a you problem as well, and I want to be clear about that. It depends on how you play campaign games. This is a game that I love playing. Like, I have a blast going through it. I have a blast setting up the next mission, diving into it, leveling up, getting my abilities, accomplishing my contracts, doing all my stuff. But that first time I set it up, once I put it away, requires some real degree of just, I'm willing to engage, I'm willing to set it up, I'm willing to move this forward so I can continue making progress on my Assassin's Creed game. I have to force myself into it. Once it's out, once I have all the components in a general accessible area, that's fine. It's much better there. But it is a messy game, and trying to remember where you left off, you're going to want to take notes. Sure, you can kind of put everything in envelopes. If you don't take rough sketches of notes of what you were doing, where you're up to, you may find yourself, well, forgetting everything that was going on for you. And then secondly, and this is a big one as well for me, is I find the headquarters board, it does add to the experience. The headquarters board as a general system of what's going on here, and I haven't heavily dived into how this works. It's basically involving allocating different people to different zones in the headquarters board to accomplish different objectives. I see why it exists, and I keep playing with it because there are elements of unlocking going on in the game that I have to play with the headquarters board, or come up with my own system of how things unlock. But it adds an extra degree of fiddliness to Assassin's Creed that I can't say I particularly appreciate. I wish the game would have given me those unlocks in a different way that didn't add another level to manage in a game that is already a very tactical game. This is a very tactical game with a lot of choices, a lot of things you can do, and a lot of choices of where to push your luck. Do I move up that tower? Because we haven't even talked about the fact that when you move up this tower and you do that whole eagle's eye thing, you'll unlock different areas. You'll pull a card, you'll look at the tower card, you'll see, oh my gosh, I unlocked a chest here, and enemies appear here. You'll see things going on in the game. It's a very cool thematic integration with the Assassin's Creed universe. But at the end of the day, this is enough of a puzzle for me. This headquarters board just adds extra maintenance, extra things to be mindful of without the same payoff of look how cool this moment felt, look how cool this game was in terms of that. So the headquarters board is definitely not a huge fan of that. As far as what I can see others not liking, as far as what might be a problem for you, to begin with, a solo versus 2 or 3 player, I've enjoyed this as a 3-player game. I vastly prefer it as a solo game, and you might as well. It depends on who you're playing with, how well they know it. This is a game where every decision will matter so much that when you're playing with other people, it's very hard to not alpha gamer them. It's very hard to not be like, ooh, we're gonna die if you do that. And it's not even like a single shot adventure. You might have to play it as a single shot adventure and just not count it against your score or whatever it is, because you're going to, if you try to introduce people to this game who don't have a good feel for the system, you're going to die. You're going to die a lot. It's hard enough to manage everything in this game when you're doing it with the mindset of, I know everything that's going on, I know what my strategy is, I'm acting in cohesion as a single unit. When you do it with other people, it's going to be a little harder, and that may not be something that's for you. And this is, again, true of the original V-Commandos, was rated best as a solo game. I think that's going to be true here as well. I would play it with 2 or 3 for that degree of immersion of having other players, the social element, but it would come at a compromise to how well you do in the game. The game is incredibly thinky. I spend a lot of time looking at the card, looking at the current event. Okay, the current event is Ladro. Immediately roll a die. I hate that event. It steals my equipment. Okay, that's the current event. That's the guards are moving this way. I'm trying to accomplish that. If I do that, I might get the alarm going. There's a ton of thinkiness in this game, a ton of times where I'm just sitting here. Like, I did a playthrough of this game one time, but I moved faster than I normally would because it's a playthrough. When I'm playing this solo, it takes me much more time as I sit there and slowly try to process every single thing to make the most efficient decision as possible to not only win the game, but to have a fully sync. Similar to the video game, there's this concept of a full sync in the game, and that's something you're going to want to achieve, at least if you're a completionist. I certainly want to achieve it. Why? Because I get a sticker. What are the stickers for? I don't know. It's a sticker. It's a sticker in the campaign sheet, and maybe it's relevant, so I want the sticker. So that's going to be that aspect. I'm trying to get the best game possible. The stealth determined by a die. We talked about this briefly, but at the end of the day, your stealth is going to be determined by a die roll. Now, I never liked this in V-Commandos, and I still don't like it in Assassin's Creed, but I like it a lot more in Assassin's Creed because I feel the degree of mitigation around it is much larger. The degrees of equipment and gear and upgrades and things you can get in this game to mitigate that die roll are much better and much more present, and therefore make it a much more palatable system. It is still rolling a die for stealth, and even with mitigation, you can still roll it poorly 3 or 4 times in a row and just have a really, really bad day. Now, granted, I've had some fun games where that happened, and then I proceeded to go full slaughter and either died or made my way out, and it felt cool, but it's a stealth system that's based on a die, which still might make this game a problem for you. When the odds don't work, they just don't work. This big box production might just be an over-the-top thing for you. This is a game where there's a lot of stuff packed into this game. I don't think it needed to have this much stuff packed into the game. I think they could have compromised in a few aspects. Let's just give one example. They could have compromised on the number of unique enemies and had the box be half as big, and you still would have had the same game experience for the most part. I've thoroughly been enjoying Assassin's Creed with all of the elements that probably fit into a normal well, if you get rid of the tower, all the elements that fit into a normal standard, whatever size box, I could probably fit in enough components to enjoy this game. This has a ton of stuff. It is a all-in, I mean, the base box is an all-in pledge, so to speak. It's not actually an all-in pledge, but it feels like an all-in pledge, the base box alone. I don't think they needed that much stuff. I think this game could have done more with less. It would have had lesser experience, lesser variability, lesser of a lot of small areas, but I think it would have been a solidly accessible game, even with half the box size and half the components, and that just might price this out of your range. You might not be looking for this game because it's not a cheap game to get in on. This is a review of a game that is very, very expensive. Secondhand market might be a little cheaper, but not really, because, I mean, people are going to want this game. It is a very, very good game. And there's 20-ish missions or so. Something like 20-ish missions I talked upon already. The replayability is not going to be as good as you might potentially be looking for, given the price tag. Now, you can replay those 20 missions, and I would argue, with the exception of the first 4 or so, you actually can. Meaning the first 4 are going to be ramping you up in the game. So you're not going to want to dive back into those. But past those first few, diving into the next 16 and replaying them, I don't think you're going to lose a lot. I think I'd happily replay one of my missions going through it again. It's already been like, once 3 weeks go by, I already forgot most of what happened anyway, and you're going to have the incentive of choosing different characters. Maybe this game I prioritize these 3 characters, next game I try a different one, there's other characters from the expansions, and they all have their own little upgrade paths and the equipment you can unlock, which is going to give you an additional incentive. Like, I can play with Claudio again and just choose totally different skills that will augment and develop him in different ways that are very rewarding. And lastly, and this is a big one, this is a table hog. This is very much a table hog. I have successfully played this in small spaces. In fact, I recently covered the Cassidy game table, which is a fairly small game table, and most of my plays of Assassin's Creed have been on that space. But it's a small space, and I didn't have it on the center playing area. I had like boards off to the side and cluttered. This is a table hog in the best of times. There's a lot going on here. Even now, I'm not even showing you all the stuff. There's like small little boards I left off the review because I don't think they're necessary, and I wanted to condense this into a small area. But this is not a game for those with small tables or small table spaces. It's a big box. It requires a big shelf space, a big table space, a lot going on in this game. Which brings us way too long into the review, into final thoughts and rating. Assassin's Creed started off, well, as an introductory experience. The first missions, 2, 3, 4 missions, are really just introducing you to the game, but already I saw the promise of how this potentially was better than V-Commandos for me, and I like V-Commandos a lot. As I continued to play, I thought I'd be giving this a 5 out of 5. I'm not, by the way. I'll get into that shortly, but I thought I'd be giving it a 5 out of 5. I was really, really enjoying it. I'm still really enjoying it. It is a lot of fun. The upgrading, the gear, all these things slowly, continuously develop, especially those first, I don't know exactly how many, 6 or 7 missions. You're continuously unlocking more and more event cards and more equipment cards, all that are going into your system. We haven't even talked about the chest cards. There's going to be this element of you're going to go to the tower to unlock chests, and these chests are slowly developing. So you have all these new cards being added even now as I play. It continuously ramped up and continuously added, and I was like, I like this much more than V-Commandos, and I do like it much more than V-Commandos. At the end of the day, Assassin's Creed to me is a 4 out of 5, and I'll explain why. But to begin with my rating system, general notes: 1s are bad games, 2s are games that are either not for me or I have too many complaints about them. 3s are going to be very good. 3s are going to be good games, just solid good games. I can recommend them, no problem, but they don't necessarily stand out in a crowd, at least not for me. 4s are the great games, and 5s are the very best games in my collection. This to me is a 4 out of 5, specifically because of the campaign elements and the headquarters board. Now, the campaign aspect is a me problem. Games that have 20 missions to dive into are just the way I play games. It's harder to dive into it. I'm not going to be finishing at one shot, which means I always have this wrestling mindset of, okay, great, let me say it's time to replay Assassin's Creed. Am I signing up for another 20 missions now? And then I don't often want to, so I push it off, and I push it off, and it sits on my shelf unplayed. Campaign games, just for me personally, the way I'm looking at games, tend to have a harder time hitting that high note the more missions it has. That's why I prefer games like Primal or Wild Ascent, that their campaign games come in at, 10 to 15 missions, as opposed to this 20 plus. And secondly, the headquarters board, it really took it down a notch for me. The headquarters board was an extra degree of fiddliness that has a payoff, to be very clear. Fiddliness that does have a payoff, but it's a payoff that is not worth the extra fiddliness in a game that is already a fairly heavy experience. Past those things, I think Assassin's Creed easily improves upon the V-Commandos experience, as long as you are fine with the aspect that this is a campaign game. This is not a single shot type story. I mean, there may be ways to play a single shot. I haven't dived into that or seen if that's a possibility, but it's not a single shot experience by design. It is a campaign game by design. It's a game that you're going to be going through it again and again, leveling up, acquiring new items, managing those new items. It adds an extra level of maintenance game to game. It adds an extra element of cleanup, of storage, of all these different aspects. Assuming you're fine with that, I think the core gameplay is a significant improvement over V-Commandos. I feel like I have much more mitigation, and I loved V-Commandos. I still love V-Commandos, but there's much more mitigation, there's much more decisions, there's much more tactical space in this game. Overall, I can easily recommend Assassin's Creed if you already like V-Commandos. Again, understanding that's a campaign game. If you haven't played the V-Commandos system, understand that this is a game that has a lot of gear, a lot of upgrades, a lot of fun things that will pull you back into it. A lot of reasons why you will continuously want to explore and engage in this game. But pay attention specifically to, first of all, the campaign aspect, and then all those things I talked about and what I can see others not liking. There's going to be stealth decided by a die. Sometimes things just won't work out in your favor. You'll draw cards or events that really just screw with you. You may have played the best game you possibly can. All that said, I've been winning 85 to 90% of the games I've played. So every single game I have played of Assassin's Creed, past the tutorial scenarios, I have felt like it was a challenge. I have felt like I don't know if I'm going to make it or not. And I have felt like I have to manage the numerous guards on the board while trying to get out alive. Most of the time I do. But I like games that make me feel like it's a struggle. It doesn't have to be a struggle. I don't care what the win rate is or isn't. Spirit Island is going to be a good example of this. A game where I always feel like I'm doing everything I can to live, even though I win most games of Spirit Island. Assassin's Creed is going to be the same way. Every single game feels tense. It just happens to be that I do win most of them. This has been my review of Assassin's Creed, an easy recommendation, a solid game from Triton Noir, an improvement over their existing system. I just wish I played campaign games more. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And as always, have a good one.